Hey, what's up everyone, DREAGEN back again, here to tell you that you should be watching Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So Godzilla, King of the Monsters is a 2019 kaiju film directed by Michael Dougherty, who previously has done films like Trick or Treat and Krampus. And is essentially a follow-up, or rather a sequel to the 2014 Godzilla film directed by Gareth Edwards. It picks up in real time 5 years later, where the world now, essentially cat's out of the bag. We know that Godzilla is real, and by and large, so are the Titans. It's what they dubbed kaiju in this film. And yes, I know for some people that was a bit of a point of contention because, like, well, these are kaiju movies, but outside of Japan, a lot of people don't understand that the term kaiju is not something that was just invented, not just invented in Pacific Rim, but is the general term. So just to kind of help distinguish between Western audiences who are less in the know, you know, they're just referred to as Titans in this film, which quite frankly, I don't have a problem with it because the Titan sounds really metal. And essentially, this story follows Monarch, which I thought was actually a really cool idea. You follow this organization, and you realize that one of the scientists in this film, she is basically has created a device called the Orca, which can kind of help communicate with the Titans to some degree. It's not like, oh, it's going to talk in language, but you find that the Titans, they all communicate through kind of this biofrequency, kind of this sonar type sound similar to whales, and essentially it's kind of like their speech, their language almost. And she's found a way to maybe kind of isolate different Titan frequencies. Problem is, if you use the wrong one on the wrong one, it can set them off. Long story short, she begins using this device to try to awaken all the Titans, because we have seen that in places where they have passed through, so cities where they've destroyed, for instance, like in this film, San Francisco from the previous film was wiped out with Godzilla's fight with the Mutos. That the radiation that's within the Titans' bodies, how it is kind of filtered through them and kind of put back into the world, causes immediate growth. So you see these gigantic, beautiful, lush forests growing, overtaking these ruined cities. So you realize that they essentially can pass over the world and trigger new growth, new life in a world that could otherwise be devastated. And basically, because of human, action, the world is on a collision course with disaster. That climate change, they're used to fossil fuels. That we're essentially going down a bad path, and that eventually we are going to physically render the planet almost unlivable for us. And that by releasing all these Titans, their march across their respective territories would cause the world to kind of regrow, would cause the world to bounce back. So her goal is to basically wake them up one at a time, allow them to kind of do their thing, and kind of force humanity back into a state of almost subservience to them. Because through this film you discover that Monarch is aware of ancient civilizations that worship them as gods, and actually found a way to coexist peacefully with them. And it wasn't until they basically went back into hibernation that we kind of forgot about them over the millennia, because an 8,000 year nap for a Titan, it's like 5 minutes to them. They're like, oh, okay, wake up, and it's the whole of human civilization has passed basically. But for us, it's enough to forget. Problem is, they go and awaken Monster Zero, King Ghidorah, who has his own agenda. And I won't spoil this for you guys because I really want you to see the movie. But if you're familiar with Godzilla's lore, the films, specifically King Ghidorah's lore in the show era, you'll know what I'm hinting at here. But if you don't know, just know that King Ghidorah is not what he appears to be, or maybe he is what he appears to be, depending on what your vision of that is. But the point is, this thing that makes him a bit of a, that throws a monkey wrench in this whole planet of theirs, is something they don't find out till after he is released. And essentially Ghidorah starts unleashing all the Titans at once, and they all fall under his control, and he is causing them to go out into the world as almost like his foot soldiers and just destroy it, bring ruin to it. And naturally, our boy Godzilla has to swoop in and try to restore order, because as we learn, Godzilla and King Ghidorah's rivalry is ancient. They are ancient nemesis. They hate each other, and basically as long as one exists, the other cannot. So it's a situation where they're going to clash, and only one of them is going to walk away from that fight. And therein lies our basic plot. So right off the bat, if you're a fan of, kaiju films in terms of action and spectacle, this one delivers in high degree. And if you like Godzilla films that tend to be a metaphor for something else, this is one of the ways I think this movie really shines, and also something that I don't think it's gotten enough attention, because Godzilla films at their core have always been metaphors for kind of human folly. The original 1954 Godzilla was essentially a metaphor for the atom bomb, the atomic age. Godzilla was meant to represent, the Japanese fears of nuclear horror, being that they are the only country that has ever been on the receiving end of a nuclear attack. But over the years, Godzilla has evolved into different things, and as the fear of nuclear war has waned here and there, he has become a metaphor for other things, and the kaiju genre as a whole has kind of become a metaphor for forces in life that are bigger than we are, no pun intended, actually, yeah, pun a little bit intended, and things that are kind of out of our control. So when you have a situation where Godzilla would have to come and save the day, on the surface, it was just kind of a big fun movie where Godzilla got to kind of play the role of a superhero and, and save the day. But beyond that, digging deeper, it was a situation of, it was us facing a threat that with all our technology, with all our know-how, or all our military, we could not fix. We essentially had to just give ourselves to a power that was greater than ourselves, knowing that what happened to the world was ultimately not up to us. That we could not save ourselves, that humanity likes to think it is kind of lord and master over the world, and Godzilla represents a force that is beyond us, and it is really up to this greater power to ultimately decide what the fate of the world is, and we're not included in that conversation, and we just have to kind of cross our fingers and hope for the best. So it is a very humbling power. And in this film, the Titans essentially represent natural disasters, climate change. If you will, Ghidorah is a superstorm. Wherever Ghidorah goes, he has a massive hurricane that surrounds it. It's a hurricane he produces. So when you see scenes of Washington D.C. flooded, and these cyclones and these massive superstorms in the sky with Ghidorah at the center, he is essentially, again, these superstorms that climate scientists have been warning for years that will happen if we continue to essentially adversely affect the environment, the atmosphere. And some of the biggest supporters of this film actually have been climate scientists who have come out and said that this film is probably one of the best metaphors they've seen for climate change, showing that, you remove the monsters in the scenes, and some of the terrifying visuals of destruction are kind of what can and probably will happen if we do not take action now to put a stop to kind of our carbon footprint, so to speak. Basically saying that, you just superimpose Ghidorah in the shot, and okay, it's a kaiju film, you take him out, and that could be 50, 60, 100 years from now. And that's what kaiju have always kind of represent, forces that are bigger than us and beyond us. And the best kaiju films have always been kind of metaphors for our own follies. So in this case, it's less about the fear of nuclear war, the nuclear era, and more about what we are doing to our planet. Like, the greatest threat facing humanity now is not some foreign aggressor who's going to launch a nuke. It is the planet being subverted and changed in a way in which we may not be able to survive anymore. Because that's the thing. And Ghidorah is reshaping the world to his own liking, as one of the scientists says in the film. So the world is not being destroyed. It's just being turned in such a way that we can't live here anymore. That the world will no longer be conducive for human life. But there will be life in this world, it just won't be us. So in a sense, Ghidorah is us. Ghidorah represents, the ultimate folly that is man, that we are turning the world into basically a place in which only monsters can exist, and thereby means we can't. So it's this great metaphor for really just kind of humanity's effect, and it's a very timely message. And unfortunately, it's a message that I feel was kind of lost on a lot of audiences, because again, a lot of people were saying, well, it's kind of a dumb plot or this, that. Whereas you see, the doctor played by Vera Farmiga, who's basically, a lot of people said her motivations were dumb. Well, within the context of this film, they do show that yes, when Titans pass, the world regrows. It is a fact, and had it not been for the fact that they awoken King Ghidorah, her plan actually would have worked. The Titans would have not rampaged across the world and destroyed everything. They would have just done what they've done peacefully, bringing about this change, this healing effect to the world. Again, it was just Ghidorah who kind of messed all that up. Again, I won't say why, but like I said, Ghidorah doesn't fall in line with the natural order, and is essentially very much like humanity. Ghidorah is an allegory for the human race, in which he does not act or work in accordance with nature. He works against it, and he perverses it and changes it to his own will, to his own liking, thereby destroying it and causing it harm in the process in a very violent, destructive way. So because of that, it is a very timely film. It has a lot to say, and it is a film that unfortunately I feel is going to become more relevant as we continue to ignore these problems, and some of this stuff starts to become a little bit more literal, and then we start looking back at this movie and going, wow, maybe we should have paid a little bit more attention. But beyond that, in terms of just entertainment value, it's a lot of fun. It's again, it's a big spectacle film, and it is a complete love letter to the Showa era of Godzilla films. The Showa era ran from 1954 and ended in 1975, even though, yes, I know technically the Showa era did not end until 1989, so therefore, technically speaking, Godzilla 84 would have been part of the Showa era, but in terms of the continuity, that's when it ran from 1954 to 1975. And this film kind of pulls a lot from the mythology of probably the late 60s through the 70s, the more kind of fantastical elements of the Godzilla franchise. The other titans in this film, Mothra, Rodan, King Ghidorah, or rather she said the other titans from the Toho universe, are done so very well, and they feel like those characters. They don't feel just like some kind of weird interpretation. Like Rodan feels like Rodan, Mothra feels like Mothra. Mothra is gorgeous and beautiful in this film, and you can tell that Michael Dougherty really had a love for these characters. That for him, these weren't just mindless beasts. They were characters that he loved growing up, like a lot of us did, and really paid homage to them. That really he treated them with a certain degree of reverence, and really showed off kind of the awesome power in which they possessed. So right off the bat, if you're a Godzilla fan, I think you're gonna like this. If you're a Godzilla fanboy, you probably won't, because it's not Toho, even though Toho approved this film and everything about it. But you're always gonna have people who are gonna nitpick and hate on it just because it's not one specific thing. But as someone who grew up loving Godzilla, watching Godzilla, eating up all things Godzilla, this film delivered for me in every way. It is made by someone who loves this franchise, and it shows. So, with that said, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, I highly recommend it. At the time of this recording, it is still in theaters, so by all means go out and go see it. If it's not in theaters anymore, I will put links in the description section below where you can pick it up, check it out, give it a watch, come back, give me some of your thoughts, and also just tell me, what's your favorite Godzilla movie? What's the Godzilla movie that for you kind of kicked it all off for you? And if you're new to Godzilla, tell me. Feel free to ask any questions. This channel is a safe place when it comes to Godzilla and Kaiju. No judgments. It's not a fanboy channel. So if you're new to it, don't worry about judgments or me making fun of you for not knowing something. If you're curious and you want to know more, please ask questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Anything to kind of spread the gospel. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace!